Welcome back to Primordial Sound Meditation. Really excited to jump into our next video with you where we're going to dive into exploring higher states of consciousness and how your personal Primordial Sound mantra is going to help you to do that in your meditation practice. Before I jump into that though, so you're going to see some really cool stuff pop up here on the screen, I want to give you a little bit of background about the higher states of consciousness. Just when you thought it couldn't get any deeper or more exciting, consciousness isn't just one thing. There are levels of consciousness. So our first level of consciousness that I want to talk to you about is what we call the waking state of consciousness. So right here, right now, there's a waking state of consciousness that's happening, me talking to you, you listening to me. That's our first state of consciousness. And then there's a second state of consciousness, which is dreaming. And then we start to get into, yes, I'm talking about when we dream, when we go to sleep, that's a level of consciousness. And then there's a third level of consciousness that's called deep sleep. And so these first three layers of waking, of dreaming, of deep sleep are really kind of the foundations of consciousness that we're all in, and we move in and out of these all the time. The fourth level of consciousness is called silence. Yes, that's an actual level of consciousness, silence. And then from there, we move into the fifth level, which is cosmic. And then our sixth level is divine. And the seventh level of consciousness is unity. So what's really interesting about these 7 levels of consciousness is that silence is right in the middle at level 4. And so if you've never practiced silence or stillness in your life, you've probably only been living in those 3 levels of consciousness. Now, I think this is really fascinating. So if we have 7 levels of consciousness that we've just talked about, and then we start to talk about the 7 chakras in the body, which many of you know about. And so those 7 chakras, if we put them side by side with our 7 levels of consciousness, when we're in the waking state of consciousness, the root chakra is activated. The root chakra is found at the base of the spine. This goes back again to ancient Vedantic wisdom. This is really mind-blowing stuff. 3,500 years ago, not only did they use primordial sound to move through 7 levels of consciousness, they knew that there were 7 energy bundles, nerve bundles in the body that had energetic purpose and meaning that took the levels of consciousness into physical form so that you could carry them out into the world. When they invented the MRI years ago and they scanned the human body, they found that those 7 nerve bundles were in the exact 7 places that the ancient Vedantics said 3,500 years ago existed. So there's some really cool stuff here that's deep, deep, deep that you could really go into a lot of research on. I've only got a few minutes to share some insights with you today, so feel free, ask me about that offline or dig into it yourself. But if you're a yogi or you've practiced yoga or you've seen the yoga man and he's got the different colored energy balls starting at the base of his spine all the way up to the crown of his head, if you were to list those side by side with your 7 levels of consciousness, here's where it gets really cool. So waking is connected with the root chakra, which is about community and a sense of belonging out into the world. Your dreaming state, which is your 2nd level of consciousness, is actually equivalent to your creative chakra, which is actually in the reproductive area, the energy bundle of how you create and birth and bring things out into the world. Then your 3rd state, deep sleep, is actually in alignment with what we would call the solar plexus, which is all about a sense of control. And so when you're in a state of deep sleep at night, your body is basically metabolizing all that it could and couldn't control throughout the day. So literally our bodies at this 3rd chakra energy system, it's responsible for digesting, taking in nutrient, removing waste. Well, deep sleep does the same for your psyche. So now we've got 3 parts of the body lined up with 3 parts of consciousness. Here's the best part. When we get to the 4th level of consciousness, silence is lined up with the heart. The heart chakra connects the lower 3 chakras with the upper 3 chakra systems, neurologically speaking, energetically speaking. So silence connects the lower 3 levels of consciousness with the higher 3 levels of consciousness. If you are not cultivating silence in your practice of personal growth and leadership development, you're not going any further. You're not connecting to the upper 3 areas of consciousness. And you're also not getting your heart activated to connect and keep the energy flow going through all the energy systems in your body. So that's why we talk about people's hearts are closed off or shut down, or the heart speaks to us in a language called silence. And if we aren't cultivating silence, we're not cultivating living with an open heart, which is able to give and receive and go into all these wonderful, things that you hear me talk about in the Jedi language around, really getting into non-judgment, getting into equanimity, discernment, invitation. The heart helps you with all of those, but you cannot access the heart if you're not cultivating moments of silence and stillness. And then you can't reach the other top 3 levels of consciousness. So the mind and the body and the spirit are all connected, but I want you to really understand when we're in this place of conscious communication, conscious leadership, consciousness in general. If we are not, you can't bypass it. You can't skip silence to get to 6, 7. It doesn't work that way. You have to cultivate silence. Silence is the bridge between the lower levels of consciousness and the higher. And then silence shows up in the heart, because the heart is the chakra that connects the bottom 3 energy systems with the upper 3. So this is really cool stuff. It's really deep stuff. But the reason you're doing primordial sound meditation is to literally cultivate silence, which then shows up in your heart. And it's a game changer. You can do lots of other practices, loving kindness, compassionate practices, nonviolent communication. They're all great things in the mindfulness world. But how many times do you sit down in silence and stillness and then sit in the vibration of your unique song, of your soul, of your beingness? And so I want to help you understand your sound mantra, your primordial sound mantra, actually comes in 3 words. And here's where it gets even more interesting. So the mantra always starts with Om, O-M. And then the second word is the unique word in Sanskrit that captures the vibration, the essence of you at that exact time of birth, date, time, latitude, longitude. It's all based upon ancient astrology. And so that word is unique to you. And then the third word of your mantra is Namaha. And so if we take Om, whatever your word is, and Namaha, and we go from a horizontal and we flip it vertical, and we look at it next to, side by side, the 7 levels of consciousness. The ancients used to pronounce Om, that's a commercialized version. It was actually Aum. A-U-M is the correct way to pronounce Om. And that is meant to be the sound of God, of existence, of the universe itself making itself known. So the Vedantics believed if you chanted Aum, you were connecting with the intelligence of all existence. So when you are in your own personal sound mantra and you start with the Aum, A, the sound A, activates waking, the U activates dreaming, and the activates deep sleep. So Aum takes you through the first 3 levels of consciousness, activates the root, the creative, and the control centers in the body. And then the next word, whatever that is for you, is what activates the silence and stillness, which really isn't silence and stillness. It's a vibration. If I asked you right now to plug your ears and close your eyes and just tell me what you hear, none of you have told me that you hear nothing. You hear a vibration, you hear a hum, you hear a frequency. That's your song, that's your sound. So the word in the middle activates the 4th level of consciousness, which speaks to the heart in the body. And then Na-ma-ha, Na activates the 5th level of consciousness, which is cosmic, which is all about the throat, being able to speak the truth. And then Ma activates the divine sound and frequency, which is connected to the 3rd eye, which is all about spiritual seeing and seeing with the eye of divinity. And then Ha activates unity consciousness, which is the crown chakra. So it's amazing. We don't talk about this. We're not really teaching this unless you go deep into the practice. But even as a teacher, I really had to keep asking questions and say, but how come? But why? So why do these yoga poses activate this in the body? And how does the mantra? And so it's all connected. And so as you're using your mantra, your 3 words, you're literally going up the 7 levels of consciousness in frequency and in sound, in vibration, and you're bringing it back down into the body in all of the representation of who you are. And here's what I think is another cool part about these 3 words. And this, you ready? Like, hold on to your seat, buckle in, because this is where it gets really cool. So Aum is the sound of God, of the universe itself, making itself known in the world. The second word, which is your personal mantra, is the Aum, making him and herself known as you in the world. And the word Namaha means that then that source itself folds back awareness on itself, experiencing itself as you, and comes back to its original point. So I want to say that again. So when you are in the Aum, whatever the word is, and then Namaha, energetically, you are in a space where source itself is made itself known as you, and then is experiencing itself as you, which is bringing the awareness back to its original creator, which is its self. So it's some really, I mean, we can go far on this one, and I just want you to just hold that thought and know that that energetic sound you're making is cultivating an extremely profound and deeply spiritual level of awareness itself, which has some life-altering and changing properties in it. And that's what creates the space in the meditation that you take out into the world that all of a sudden just shows up and you're like, I did something different today. Because you brought a different level of awareness and a different frequency that tapped in, tuned in, turned on to something way greater than this small egoic self that you've been living in and thinking is who you really are. So this is how the mantra works. And on our next video, I'm going to talk about how we use this mantra. I'm going to take you through a script on going through the actual meditation. But I really wanted you to understand these levels of consciousness. There's a great handout exploring the higher states of consciousness. There's a deep, deep kind of read in here around soul consciousness, which is silence. So that level 4 of consciousness, that soul consciousness, is silence. It's the bridge that we talked about. And in there, make sure you read this because they talk about this, and Deepak wrote this one, and he said, soul consciousness is the state we experience when our internal reference point shifts from body, mind, and ego to the observer of body, mind, and ego. We experience and cultivate soul consciousness when we meditate. This observer is referred to as the witnessing awareness or the silent witness. And during meditation, we begin to identify with this aspect of the self, which is beyond thinking and feeling, and we start to feel more calm, centered, and intuitive in daily life. So this awareness of awareness itself, it creates such a bigger perspective, and you've got to trust me on this one. You just got to do it. It opens up a whole different way of operating in the world. And I'm really excited on the next video to take you through that and walk you into how you actually do this through the Primordial Sound mantra meditation script. So I'll see you on the next video.